Okay, so what if the life you're living isn't just some random series of events, but a game that you are playing right now? Today, we're going to dive into a text that asks a pretty provocative question. Are you actually in control of the rules?
So the source material kicks things off with this huge idea. What if the entire reality we experience, all of its meaning, all its drama, what if it's just something we've all collectively invented, like a shared story we've all just agreed to tell ourselves? I mean, that really sets the stage for a radical rethink of our world, doesn't it?
And this is the central question, right here. Imagine being dropped into a massive, super complex game, but nobody ever hands you the rulebook. You're just playing. Well, the source we're digging into suggests that's exactly what's happening to all of us. But here's the good news. The rules might be a lot simpler than we think.
So let's explore this first idea, life as a playground. The core metaphor here is that life isn't this big battle to be won, but it's a place to be experienced. And in this playground, there's one fundamental rule that governs absolutely everything: reflection.
And here is the crucial point. Everything we experience on the outside, our relationships, our job, our circumstances, is a direct mirror of our internal state. Think of your frequency as your own personal radio station. Your dominant thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, they're constantly being broadcast out, and the universe simply reflects that signal right back at you. That becomes your reality.
Now, if that's true, then why do so many of us feel like we're not in control? Well, the source argues it's because most of us are unconscious players. We're just running on autopilot, totally unaware of the frequency we're sending out into the world.
And this really breaks down the symptoms of that autopilot mode. Whether it's looking for approval you already have, or protesting something which, ironically, just gives it more energy, or just feeling like you have no choice. Do any of these feel familiar? The source calls these the side effects of being human, when we're playing the game unconsciously.
Wow, this is such a powerful line. The source is suggesting that before we reach for anything outside of ourselves, we're already medicating ourselves with our own thoughts. That inner dialogue, the beliefs we have, the stories we repeat over and over, these are the primary substances that literally shape our perception and create our reality.
And that leads directly to this. The narrative we create in our heads isn't just some passive commentary, it's the actual script for the game. If you tell a story of struggle, life reflects struggle. You tell a story of possibility, life reflects possibility. The story is the cause, not the effect.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. How exactly does our inner world create the outer one? The source material lays out a really clear process for how this reality of ours is formed.
First, you got to understand this concept of the field. Think of it like a huge ocean of energy that connects everything and everyone. It's not just a passive backdrop, it's an active, responsive medium. And every single one of us is constantly sending ripples into it with our own personal frequency.
And here's how it works, in 3 simple steps. First, you generate an inner frequency based on your dominant state of being. Second, you broadcast that frequency out into the collective field, kind of like a radio tower. And third, the field, which is totally impartial, just reflects that exact frequency back to you in the form of people, events, and circumstances. And that, right there, becomes your reality.
So you can basically broadcast on 2 primary frequencies. On the left, you've got the victim frequency, things like blame, judgment, fear. The source says this creates a denser, more limited reality. But then on the right, you have the empowered frequency, gratitude, love, choice, which creates an expanded reality, one that's full of possibility. The question is, which one are we broadcasting most of the time?
And here's a pretty stunning number from the text to put it all in perspective. A clinical psychologist mentioned in the source suggests that up to 95% of humanity is living subconsciously on that autopilot program, totally unaware of their contribution to the game. That's a huge reason why so many of us feel powerless. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is the turning point. This is the moment we can shift from being an unconscious piece in the game to a conscious, empowered player. And it all hinges on one thing.
And here it is. The key to changing the game isn't about changing the world outside of us, but it's about becoming aware of and taking ownership of what we are contributing. It's about realizing the reflection is ours, because we are the source.
So the shift looks like this. We move from being this kind of puppet on the left, unconsciously reacting based on old programming and blaming things outside of ourselves, to becoming the person on the right, consciously choosing. This means being present, owning the reflection, and actively rewriting that internal story. That is how you change your frequency.
The source also makes this brilliant distinction. When we're asking questions from a place of resistance, like, why is this happening to me, we're stuck. But when we shift to open curiosity, like, that's interesting, I wonder what in me created this reflection, the struggle just stops, and it all becomes an enjoyable playground again.
And this brings all of these ideas directly to you. If you want to become an empowered player, the very first step is to get honest about your own contribution, to really look at your own signal. So let's just ask, right now, what is your most dominant thought? What's the narrative that's running most often in your mind? Because according to this idea, that is what becomes you, your playground, your life.
And another way to put it is this: what is your echo? What's the signal you are sending out into the field that just keeps coming back to you? Your life's reflection is your echo. Are you listening to what it's telling you about your own broadcast? Ultimately, it all comes down to this one question. Now that you've seen the rules of the game laid out like this, how are you playing? Are you playing consciously, with awareness and with choice, or are you running on that 95% autopilot program?
And we'll end with this final, really liberating piece of advice from the source. It's not about adopting some new rigid dogma. It's about experimenting. Try these ideas on, see what fits, and then ultimately forget the rulebook and just go play. Make the game your own. Because in the end, you're the one holding the controller.